Everybody, welcome back for my third installment of Cold Connections, and today we're going to talk about tabs. I love tabs, especially if you like working with found objects like I do. You can't always use heat because you might ruin the piece, although I've had a happy accident with some tin that I soldered something nearby it and it just turned this bright pink tin to like a dusty pink because of the heat. So that was a nice accident. But normally I try not to get heat next to found objects. So tabs, that's what we're going to do today. And I thought we'd make a moth brooch. And I'm choosing the same colors that I did last week on the moth necklace. Just kind of trying to think about fall and keeping a cohesive color palette going. So I got some license plates and I prepped my parts. I made patterns yesterday. So I've got my different layers that I'll cut. And a teeny tiny pattern for the body. And I've prepped the pieces out of license plate. And I was going to do this totally cold connect, but I'm doing kind of a fancy tube rivet, so I soldered a little bezel. And then I soldered the tube, which will be the rivet. And I'm going to set a little tiny piece of street sign in there. But otherwise, everything else will be a tab or a tube rivet. So let's get started. And I almost forgot, we're also going to do a cold connect pin backing. So no heat to solder on a pin back. I've gone ahead and drilled and punched all my holes for the rivets, so you don't have to watch me straining my brain to get all that lined up correctly. Again, that's one of the hardest things with the cold connects, is making sure everything is lined up. So I've got all that, and now I'm going to take the back plate and we're going to make the tabs. So I'm just going to trace the back piece of the moth. And then also trace in, oops, where the rivets are going. And the tabs on this are only going to come over this layer. If you were going over something really thick, like when I do the street signs, I'll take a measurement of that thickness, because I'll want to have enough to come up the side of that and then over. And then a lot of times I add just a couple more millimeters just in case, because you can always sand those down once you've flipped them over. Okay. So then I just kind of think about where I want the tabs. And they don't have to be around the entire piece. Just a few here and there will hold it. Let's see. And I did one neat thing with the license plate. I didn't flatten it out all the way. So I've still got the ridge of the plate here, which is actually going to serve as a spacer. I'm not even going to need spacers on this one. So I want my tab just to come over and meet this little bump up. I'm just going to do 3. And sometimes I'll lay the other piece on top just to kind of see where the tabs are going to come over. So there's a nice little space right here, so this tab will flip over nicely there and not run into the second layer. Okay, so I already did it on the other side. Got everything drawn out. So I'm going to glue this down to some silver and then cut it out with the jeweler's saw. I added some stamping to the back. Lots of lucky symbols because this is going to be a lucky moth. I've patinaed it, polished, but now it's time to think about how the pin mechanism is going to work. So we need to create two tabs that will be the prong holders for the pin. And then we need a little tubing to hold the back end of the wire that creates the pin. So I'm going to cut, well, I'm going to drill 4 little holes, and then I'll basically be cutting tabs. And then these tabs will come up and bend over. And that will be the catch for the pin. And for the other side, I will do the same thing, but then I'm going to take a piece of tubing, and those little prongs will reach inside the tubing, and I'll bend them over, and that will hold it down in place. It'll make more sense when I cut. Drilled 4 tiny, tiny holes. Let's see. Pushed them up just a little bit. Hopefully you can see. I don't want to bring them up too far yet till I get everything riveted. Then I'll do 2 more over here. And here's the other side that I've cut. I'm going to go around the edge and start bending these tabs up. And I think I got it set up that I can tab the back piece down and then rivet all the other layers on top. So I won't have to worry about trying to maneuver these tabs underneath that second layer of license plate. Or at least that's the way I'm imagining it. We'll see. Sometimes you just never know until you get going into it. I think I will put in a couple of these rivets just to kind of secure it. Okay. going to flip up the little tabs and set the tubing in there. Two little tabs have gone inside of the tube and it's holding it down. But we've got the wire bent the way we need it. Okay, I definitely recommend using steel wire for the pin rather than this piano wire, especially with this type of tube setting. To hold, that was just too difficult to bend while it was in there. But that's the first one, so now I know for the next one. But I highly recommend checking out this book too if you don't have it, Behind the Brooch. It's got some great ideas for the pin mechanism. And I have a brooch in here that I did similar to this, but the entire thing is cold connected. And I did the tubes. I cut the little flaps a little bit different on this one. Probably would have been better to have stuck with that. But the entire thing is cold connected. There's folds all the way around, street sign and tin can, and then tabs over the back, and then like a little safety pin catch that just goes through the tubes. But there's lots of really clever little ideas for the pin mechanism in this book. Really wonderful to add to your library. I hope you enjoyed that video on tabs and pin mechanisms. I'll see you next week.